Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. This is Mark Moyer, and I'm broadcasting from podcast headquarters here in New York City, the Big Apple. And I'm thrilled to have you here from wherever you're listening, whether it's New York, the United States, Canada, Mexico, or anywhere else on this great planet. And I'm thrilled today because I just spoke with J.R. Tolver. And J.R. is such a consummate professional. This guy played football for several years, but more importantly, he's really made the transition from sport, from football, into business. And he's doing it where he's providing great mentorship, great information. He runs an insurance agency, but he gives much, much more. He's really just making such a positive impact. Super guy, super conversation. We covered lots of ground between his career playing, but also his business career. We talked a lot about taking businesses to new levels and really how to make them grow by leveraging your network and those who you know and those who you get to know, right? So it was a great conversation. You're going to love it. But before we get started, make sure you go on to iTunes and wherever else you listen to podcasts, like it, leave me some comments, great feedback. I'd love to hear from you at mark@markmoyer.com. And go to the website to see my previous episodes. They're all really great. Trust me, you'll love them. So without further ado, let's get things rolling with J.R. Tolver. Happy listening. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. I'm excited today to have J.R. Tolver. And you know what? Don't call him Gregory. I learned that at an early age many years ago. Anyway, and it's great to have J.R. He's way overseas or something, way over on like in San Diego. I don't even know where that is. It's a different country. They have lots of really beautiful palm trees and beaches and all kinds of stuff, but they also have the occasional fire and some other things. So that's why I'm glad I'm here in New York City. But anyway, JR, welcome to the show and thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So we've chatted before, and you know, one of the things that I really like about you and what you're doing is that you've really taken your athletic background and leveraged it into a successful business. And, you know, there've been some lessons learned along the way, some steps that you've made that you've maybe missed a little bit, but others that you've really done well on. And we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of your football career, but really the basis of this show is really, I like to talk about how people are making an impact after they leave the game. And that's why I'm thrilled to have you on board. So let's jump right in. Really what I want to hear first, JR, is a little bit about, you know, what was it that got you interested in the first place in playing a sport or playing sports? And, you know, how old were you and was it always football or did you start with something else? Tell me a little bit about the sporting background.
It's funny. That's one of the things that I can pinpoint to the exact moment. My dad was a football player in high school, and I grew up in his hometown in Mansfield, Louisiana, which was a really small town. So he was a little bit of a local celebrity there. So I used to, as a kid, always hear people talk about how good my dad was and, you know, all that good stuff. But I remember very vividly sitting on the couch watching Doug Williams beat the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl back in 1986. And I remember the commentators kept saying, you know, Doug Williams is the first African-American quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl. And right. I think at that moment was the moment that I decided I wanted to play in the National Football League and be like Doug Williams and win a Super Bowl. So that's where it started for me.
Well, that really was a big changing moment. And I remember that game and everything that led up to it. And it was really pretty exciting because, you know, unfortunately, you know, in the past it had not been African-American quarterbacks leading the thing, but there's stars at every other position. So it was really a changing moment. And it really led the way for some other amazing quarterbacks to come through that I'm sure also followed in his footsteps. But so tell me, so you started playing, and walk me through a little bit of the football stuff. Was it Pee Wee football? When did you start?
Yeah, I think I was 9 the first season that I played tackle football, and basically played straight through. I want to say I missed maybe 1 year
Okay.
from the time I was 9 years old till I retired in 2008. So yeah, Pee Wee, and moved to California in middle school. Played high school football at Mira Mesa High School here in San Diego. Played football at San Diego State, and then was drafted by the Dolphins and played 4 years in the NFL, 2 for Miami, 2 for Dallas, 1 in Canada, 1 in the Arena Football League, and that sums up my 6-year professional career.
Oh, professional, because you're still playing. I'm assuming beach football, right?
Yeah, I still talk a little trash. My nephew's a senior in high school, so
Oh, great.
I talk more than I play at this point.
Now, does he want to continue into college and so forth, or what's his plan?
This is his first full year of playing football, high school
Wow.
football. So we'll see. He's a talented kid, but he's got a late start. So if he plays at the next level, he has to have a big senior year or maybe go to junior college. But we'll see. I'm just happy he's out there having a good time bonding with his teammates.
Well, and bonding with your teammates. I mean, that's a huge part of the sport, isn't it? It's something where, I mean, you make these friendships and you keep them for life. I mean, they're really your extended family, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still have friends that I played, high school football with, Pop Warner football. Some of my best friends in the world are guys that I played with in college. So outside of just being on the field and working hard and playing the game, there's a lot of external things that sport bring, and it's really one of the reasons why I got into business, because it's really still team driven, just a matter of getting the right people around you, just like a football team.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think that's sort of the way it is with almost any organized sport, is that you become really tight with the people that you play with, because it's not just the game that you're sharing the experience with, but it's everything. It's all the practice. It's all the time, even off the field, but downtime where you might be traveling and you're just spending a lot of time with these guys and these women for women's sports. And it's I believe that that's one thing that makes team sports so important and so critical for development going forward, because you're learning so many sort of skills and capabilities that really help post career, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But tell me, so you played, and I know, I don't want to brag on your behalf, but I know you set a couple of records here and there, in your school and so forth, receiving, etc. But tell me, go ahead and make the quick plug. Tell me about the record.
Yeah, so I teamed up with Kasem Osgood my senior year, and we set 2 NCAA records. It was a team record, so most catches by a tandem on the same team in a season, and also most yards by a tandem on the same team in a season. So we had a really special year, my senior year, which was 2002.
2002. Wow. What was
I
that
know.
like? No, I'm kidding.
It's funny, man. It goes by quick. It's 15 years since college, and now this year is my 10th year being out of the game professionally. So it comes and goes really fast.
Well, everything does. And, I guess we don't necessarily, it's funny, day to day, you feel like, wow, nothing is, I mean, things are moving right along. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I'm X years old. It does fly by,
Exactly.
it's great. So you graduated college and you got drafted. What was that whole experience like when you first found out you were picked? And then, you were kind of like, oh my God, what happens? How's this, what happens next kind of a thing? How'd that all, try to, give me a little taste of what happened back then.
It was amazing, to be honest with you, to work, to want something since you're 6 and to work it into fruition was a phenomenal feeling. The other thing that being drafted did was it intersected passion and business for the very first time. I really got a chance to see what it was like to be a part of not only a team, not only something that I was very passionate about and loved to do, but a business. So that was my first intersection, being drafted to the Miami Dolphins. And that was my first intersection of business and sport and passion. And it was really eye-opening for me.
Well, so talk to me about the intersection of business, because, you know, I don't think too many players really, their first thought is certainly not business when they get drafted or they're about to play. They're thinking, oh my God, I'm about to grab a football for whoever, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the whoever's, right? And
Right.
so, you know, one of the things, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but one of the things that's pretty frustrating is that, you know, that whether it's the NFL or the individual teams, I mean, they're in business to put a product on the field. They don't
Absolutely.
necessarily care what happens off the field. I mean, they don't want you to be doing stuff you shouldn't be doing. But on the flip side, they don't necessarily care if you're pursuing any additional education or if you're trying to, you know, learn how to run a business, et cetera, right? And that's something we really need to sort of work on and change, especially for the guys coming into the league now. That you know, I think I'm seeing a little bit more of an entrepreneurial spirit with some of the new players coming in, you know, coming out of college, and some of them are learning that, but it's still not enough yet. But before we jump into that, so you played, you know, for the Dolphins, the Cowboys, and you went up to Canada. Where were you in Canada?
Calgary.
You know what? Calgary's probably I mean, it's an incredibly beautiful city, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome. It was a really good transition to the end of my career, playing that last year in Canada before I, you know, played one more year arena football. But yeah, man, it's a beautiful place. I got a chance to experience international living. That's when I got my passport in 2007,
Cool.
when I
Yeah.
went to Canada. So it's a beautiful place. I really enjoyed my time up there. I think the league is run really well. I think there's awesome players in Canada. So it was a great way for me to end my career.
And it's an exciting game to an extent. I mean, you know, more guys in motion, and you know, just 3 downs, and it's you know, the scores are outrageous. You know, 52-47 and so on. It's almost like arena football, but on a bigger scale. And
Exactly.
now, did you find it an easier game to play? Was it harder? What was it like up there?
No, it was different, but it's football. You know, anytime you put 11 or 12 guys on the field, you put pads on them. The objective is the same, right? Score touchdowns, stop guys from scoring touchdowns. There was just a couple of tweaks here and there, but outside of that, the same athleticism, the same concentration, the same focus was a part of being successful in Canada, just like it was in the NFL or college or high school. So great game. Once again, really well run league with a ton of great players. And I very vividly remember enjoying that experience very, very much.
Oh, that's great. You know, I find that also when you play in a country that's not your own, it's quite an adjustment because look, I mean, Canada's not necessarily a big difference from the U.S. versus playing in, you know, Germany or something, right? But it's something where you have to adapt a little bit to the different cultures and the different people and their different personalities. And I mean, I got to tell you, everybody's so friendly up there. That's one thing I remember about Canadians. I love them; they're great. They drink a lot of beer too, which I like. I hope that's not a bad stereotype or something. But anyway, and but Calgary itself, I remember I went there not to. I shouldn't even say what year, so I probably should. I won't, but I'll tell you, 1981, when you were negative, whatever you were, or something. And wait, right? I guess you
I
were.
was one.
All right. Anyway, so
I was
1980, I was here. You were hanging out. So 1981, I was a Boy Scout, and we were invited to go to the Canadian Jamboree, which was being held in Calgary at Banff, right? I mean, that mountain is incredible. I mean, that whole area is so beautiful. And we were one of the where there was like 50 Americans and like 18,000 Canadians. So we were almost like these fish inside a fishbowl. They're like, oh my God, you're American. And we traded all these pins and we did all this. It was, I mean, I learned everything about Canada and its provinces. And I almost felt like I'd become almost Canadian, but it was such a great experience. I mean, I was blown away by how clean Calgary was. There was no garbage anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I live in New York City now. There's a fair amount of garbage everywhere, right? And in Calgary, like, I noticed even the garbage cans were empty. Like, I don't know, someone threw something away and someone else would throw out the garbage can like real quick. It was crazy to me, but it was beautiful. Anyway, all right. So then you do the arena football, and then at what point did you say, "Oh, you know what? Maybe it's time"? What was it? Was there a specific incident or injury, or did you just wake up one morning and say, "I don't know"?
I was already preparing for life after football in 2006 when I got hurt with the Dallas Cowboys. That was the second time in 3 years that I've been injured. So I started feeling as if the writing was on the wall a little bit. So although I played 2 more years after 2006, I had already started preparing for a transition out of football. My big picture plan was to become a high school football coach, a teacher possibly, and run a small business at the same time. I always had that inspiration based off of my high school football coach was an entrepreneur, ran a driving school.
Oh,
He
really? Oh,
was a
cool.
teacher and a coach at the school, and that was something that was always really cool to me. So I wanted to do that. I started working that way in 2006. And then in 2009, I took a job as an athletic director and a head football coach at a small private school in Newport Beach. And concurrently, I was running a small business in San Diego, a waste consulting company, where I would go into businesses and help them save money on their waste and recycling expenses. So my dream kind of came true. I was coaching and teaching at a high school while running a small business at the same time, which was a really good experience for me.
Well, and look, what you're doing right here is I mean, really what you're exhibiting is something that really everybody should be doing. Is really sort of, and maybe not even waiting till the end of your career, but I mean, look, you were only 2 or 3 years in when you started preparing. You were saying, you know what, there's going to be a point where I can't play anymore, or if I get hurt, or I just need to be ready, right? And
Right.
so what you did was you prepared. You made the effort to, get yourself a little, more comfortable, more educated, more prepared for that post playing career. And so you did the waste management thing. You started doing the coaching thing. And so how did it transition? I mean, right now you're running your own insurance practice, which is, I bet you're going to agree with me, it's not easy, right?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. But it goes back to everything you said, right? Which is the experience. I think business is really all about your experiences, how you bring your experiences to a product or to a service or to a technology company. Because at the end of the day, a business is just a group of people. It's really a group of people chasing a purpose, no different than a sport, right? It's football, but at the end of the day, you have 22 people chasing a purpose, and that's what business is. So for me with the insurance company, it gives me an opportunity to really leverage my background, leverage some of my big wins and my big losses, not only in business but just in life in general, and to be able to stop people from maybe making some mistakes that I made, or some things that they don't see coming that I can see coming. So it's been an easy way for me to use my experience, my personality, and to do what I like doing best, which is helping people, being a mentor, being an advisor, helping people with things that are important.
Well, that's awesome. And speaking of that, JR, you just mentioned how you love to help people. With that said, give me three pieces of advice you would give a current player, whether they're in high school or in college or even in the pros right now. Give me three things you would tell them. Look, make sure you do this as soon as possible. What kind of advice would you give them?
So I always come back to Rich Dad Poor Dad, book by Robert Kiyosaki, right?
Yeah.
And to me, money is one of those things that it'll come and go if you let it. It'll stay and grow if you systemize it. And I think Robert Kiyosaki does a great job of making the concept of money simple and easy. So the three things that I would want guys to know as it pertains to money is it's very easy to make money. It's a little bit, you have to be more intentional about keeping and growing it, right? And there's three rules there. There's, pay yourself first, right? Make sure that every time you get paid, you take a little percentage, you put it aside, and you act
Yep.
like you never got it. The
Right.
second is to really understand the difference between an asset and a liability, right? And if you're going to buy a liability, understand how that affects that money being not put into an asset that could grow for you. So understanding the difference between those two. And then the
Right.
third one is just realizing it's not what you make, it's what you keep, right? So from what you pay in taxes to, what you spend on liabilities, at the end of the day, the goal is to die rich. So understanding those three things, pay yourself first. It's not what you make, it's what you keep, and understanding assets versus liabilities.
Right. Obviously, that's great advice. But what I'd like to also hear from you is, maybe give me a couple ideas of some of the lessons that you learned coming out of or starting a business and running a business that, are lessons that you want to make sure maybe some of the other guys don't necessarily go through or they avoid, or what should they make sure about when they're starting a business, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I would say there's nothing new under the sun. So chances are, if you have an idea, somebody's already done it. They've done
Yeah.
it really well, or they've done it really poorly. So before you start and venture out and start chasing whatever vision that you have, take a step back and try to find a couple of people to talk to. Try to find somebody who did it really well. Try to find somebody who didn't do it well, and then make your decisions based off of the information that you get. One of the worst things I did as a businessman, and it's probably an ego thing, is that I have an idea and I just go without really finding a mentor, checking in, not building things in a vacuum, and then making sure that it is good as I think it's can be based off of information that I receive from somebody who's already been there in a good way or been there in a bad way.
I know somebody that can really help you with that. Anyway, so no self-promotion today, folks. Maybe I will later. Anyway, now that's all great advice. And I think one of the things I like to tell people and is that you're absolutely right. People have done things, your idea of, wow, I'm going to have a new car wash where I'm also serving coffee and baked goods or something. Who knows? Maybe someone's done that already, right? But the thing is that I find that, yes, there are tons of great ideas out there, but it's all about the implementation. And to me, the most important thing, especially when you're trying to run a business, is anticipating, well, what is it the client really wants? Who's my potential best customer client? And what is it that they are really looking for? In other words, what you should be selling is the results to them and not necessarily your own product. No, don't worry so much about the product unless it's satisfying what your client wants, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's really big. And just with the players, to me, it's also about confidence. When you're on the field or the rink or whatever sport you play, you're you're totally confident in your skill set. You're a kick-ass athlete. You can really crush it in that environment. But sometimes when you leave that environment, and let's say you attend a meeting with other business people, sometimes athletes they freeze up a little bit and they lose that confidence because they say, well, I'm really good on the field, but I'm just not good in a conference room. I just don't know how to do that. And what I try to tell people all the time is that you actually are going to be very good at that. Athletes bring so much to the table that they don't already know that they have, whether it's a comfort with the media, whether it's performing under pressure, performing, sort of learning playbooks. I mean, that's not easy to do. And you're also highly manageable. So I think what you're doing is great because you've taken a lot of what you learned in the game of football and you brought it into how to run a business. I mean, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's nuances, right? So it's some things that you don't know that contribute to being successful or not being successful in business, but they're all nuances. I think the thing that prevents athletes from being successful in their next step is not being aware of all the things that go into being successful where we are. And to be honest with you, it's because everything is done for us. You don't have to build your own practice plan. You don't have to, organize your travel logistics. Literally, all you have to do is worry about yourself, study your plays, make sure you get your weight room in, make sure you get your treatment in. So you're worrying about yourself for the benefit of the team. But if you really are aware of everything that goes into putting you into that position, then it transfers a lot better. One of the things I have problem with, and you set it up, to yourself, it's never the vision for me. I always have a good idea of where I want to go. It's more so like implementing it and executing it, right? And executing it is not that hard because as a player, that's what you do. You execute on plays, but it's that implementation phase. That's the part the part that if you're not aware of all the things that are going on around you, the implementation phase is one of those things that can create a bottleneck, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, what I've noticed is that um, you're not alone. I mean, JR, look, virtually every athlete I've spoken with, they've all got these, it's great ideas, and they can bootstrap a beautiful website and sort of a product and getting an infrastructure going. But then they're like, okay, now what? And you're right, it's that now what, and what do I do with it? And what you said earlier is very important, very true, that to me, whether you're an athlete or not an athlete, it's so essential to bring in bring in mentors that can really help out, that can really, they have expertise that you may not. Everybody has different types of expertise, right? So I think that's pretty essential. So now that you've got, well, let me take a step back. State Farm, you started your agency how long ago?
Almost 2 years ago.
So in growing it, what have been in your opinion, some of the bigger challenges in growing it?
Going back to exactly what you said, it's not about me. It's not about what I've done. It's not about what I think. It's about what the client thinks, right? So Insurance is one of those things that I can't tell you what to buy. I can't recommend that you do something that I would do. The biggest part for me is take a step back, understand what's going on with the person, and then try to make sure that they have options based off of where they are, right? And that's been a big thing for me because, again, my coach never asked me, hey, JR, do you want to run a comeback or a curl? Right? He said, hey, look, this is the play.
Right.
We may throw it to you. We may not throw it to you, but this is your job. And I think when I first got into sales, I was trying to just tell people, what to do. You got to understand that it's not about you, it's about them. So create an environment where people can make their own decisions based off the guidance that you give them.
Well, right. And I think especially in sales, and especially if it's something in insurance, what I've found regarding insurance, and we've spoken about this before, I think I'm a pretty smart guy, mostly, and I know a fair amount of stuff about a fair amount of stuff. But with insurance, I don't understand a lot of the nuances. And I don't really know the different programs, different types, what's really smart for me to have, what's not. Unfortunately, I think sometimes insurance agents get kind of piled in with real estate and lawyers and this and that, where you're never 100% sure you're getting what you really need, or if you're getting what the agent wants to sell you, right? So to me, JR, like the way I believe an agent in the insurance space would stand out is if they became known as not just a great reputation per se, but also someone who's really adding value, someone who's educating people. Like if for example, if I saw you write an article somewhere, on LinkedIn or, in one of the, Forbes or something, where you said, here are the 5 things that every individual should consider when looking at life insurance, A, B, C, D, E, whatever those 5 things are. Mm-hmm. And if I read that, and then at the bottom it said something like, would love to tell you more about it, reach out to me, JR, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm thinking, well, here's a guy that's actually trying to teach me about it and not just sell it to me. And to me, that would be enormous. I would pick you over everybody else in a heartbeat if I felt that you were the guy that's really walking me through this and helping me out, instead of the guy that just picks up the phone and says, yeah, what do you want? $100,000 or whatever it is. Yeah, fine. Here's the rate. Click. And
Right.
that's not educating me at all. So I know a lot about, for example, career and business coaching. It's what I do. So I can talk about that all day long, but I don't really know too much about the insurance space. So anybody can teach me that becomes very valuable to me. So that might be something that, I would recommend anyway to do maybe more of if you're doing it already, but just throw some more information out there that educates and teaches, because then people will see that it's you doing that and they'll want to reach out to you. I mean, that's what I would want to do. So that's that. But so you've got this agency, and it's running your own office. I mean, you're the boss, but as the boss, you've got to do kind of everything, right? I mean, it's not like you're you're sitting in your chair like I'm the big executive, big shot. I mean, I'm assuming like emptying the water thing. Everything, right?
The whole nine.
Whenever it's funny when I get a phone call and someone says, Mark, yes, we'd like to talk to your IT department. I'm like, yeah, you are. Well, can we speak to your chief legal officer? Whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's me. And yeah, I'm also the executive chef. I'm the, when you run your own thing.
Garbage.
Oh yeah, everything.
Yeah,
I am waste management, right? Anyway, but going forward, how would you like to take, what are some of the things you want to do with not just your current business, your agency, but what are some of the other things you'd love to do?
Yeah, I enjoy, and you alluded to it, speaking and teaching. Again, I think I have some very unique experiences that can be attached to experiences that people are already having, right? Like the first or second year professional player, or the kid that leaves college and kind of doesn't know what to do, doesn't know where to go, feels like he's behind. So those are some things, and I'm a really, by nature, just a team guy, right? So I look at it and I'm always wondering about the big picture and who are the players within it. So financial services is that, I'm an insurance guy.
Right.
But insurance is just a small piece of the financial picture. Who's your financial planner? Who's your CPA? Who's the guy helping you, pick your stocks? Who's the guy helping you buy a house? All of that stuff is really built into the big picture of financial services. And for me, I like to collaborate with any client that I have. I like to collaborate with those other pieces, because I know that if I can talk to the financial planner and the CPA, then we're all going to create the best possible ecosystem for the client. So I really don't like doing things piecemeal. So if you ask me, what are some of the things I want to do next, I would say mostly just expand the horizon within financial services, help people build an ecosystem, and help them manage that ecosystem.
Oh, that's great. One of the things that you mentioned to me a while ago is something that I didn't know, but there's a whole lot of parts of insurance, especially the umbrella policy, that I think athletes themselves don't realize it's part of the plan, part of the policy. And one of the things you mentioned was just how some of them just don't even know what falls under their coverage. Are there any specific elements that, what I'd love for you to do right now is maybe almost as if you were speaking to an audience of current players, or even retired players, and maybe talk about one or two things that they may have as part of their plan that maybe their agent never really talked to them about, and they may not even know they have.
The biggest thing is liability coverage. Normally when people buy, let's just say, auto insurance, they'll say, I want full coverage or liability only, not realizing that there's different levels of liability coverage that are involved in liability only and involved in full coverage. So first and foremost, I call it a liability calculator. When you buy any type of insurance, it's meant to protect your assets. So in order to protect your assets, you need to know how much protection you actually need. So don't just go to your car guy and say, I need car insurance, I want full coverage.
Right.
Go to your car guy and say, hey, help me figure out how much liability protection I need so that I can buy the proper amount of liability coverage on this policy, whether it's liability only or full coverage.
Got it. And I think you mentioned to me another time that there's even protection in case, athletes get into any sort of, we'll say, extracurricular issues, right? That they sometimes don't realize that they've got coverage to sort of, whether it's getting counsel or what, they don't really realize that they've got that ability, they've got that coverage. And it might be something where they don't even get into trouble, but they get accused of getting into trouble, right? There's a lot of, unfortunately, opportunists out there that take advantage of athletes, especially the ones that they realize are doing pretty well financially. What kind
Yeah,
of, tell me a little bit about that.
yeah. When you buy insurance, you're hiring attorneys. So an attorney is going to come in and protect you in the case of a lawsuit, right? So bodily injury, property damage, personal injury, any type of suit that is brought against you, it's worth it to go back to your insurance company and say, do you guys cover this, right? I know it's just my car insurance, or I know it's just my home insurance,
Right.
but there's liability protection on both. If something happens, you get into a little bit of trouble, the first call that you should make is to your insurance agent to understand if you have coverage built in that can help you with something that went wrong. If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. But that's the first call that you should make if somebody brings lawsuit against you, or you hurt somebody, they're threatening to sue you. Start
Right.
with your insurance guy and then mushroom out from there.
Well, that's great. And that's something that, maybe, I don't think players on teams really know that. I mean, and that's something that message needs to get out more, because, again, whether you do something wrong or you don't, you need to be prepared for it and covered for it. And I think that's a great message. Now, one of the things I want to talk about for a couple minutes now, JR, is just how getting some advice can really make a significant impact on the business. And, again, earlier I talked about, if you put out there some information that some other people aren't necessarily putting out, I think that'll make you stand out. I know that you do some speaking, and when you speak, obviously I think maybe some people want to hear you speak because they say, wow, here's a guy that used to play football. That's really cool. But I think what's important when you speak is to also include in there plenty of actionable advice and tips and strategies and things that they will walk away not just motivated and inspired, but they'll also actually have additional knowledge that they can use. And maybe that's something that you can start doing more of if possible. And then the other thing is, something I experience every single day. People have a very, very strong pull towards their fellow alumni, where they went to school, right? Or maybe they played a sport. Like I play ice hockey, and I'm a member of a group on LinkedIn. It's called Hockey Players Doing Business Together. And it's amazing how much business I get from people that reach out to me and say, hey, you play hockey? Instead of, hey, you're a coach, And I'm like, yeah, man, of course I play hockey. That's awesome, right? And so we talk about that, and that bonds us, right? And it's the same thing with, I went to a small school in upstate New York, Colgate University, and people say, I'll hear from another Colgate graduate, and it's almost like we're best friends already because we shared that same 4-year experience. And so the same thing goes with you and your college. I mean, I think that if you hear from fellow alums, I think that they would love to do business with you over some guy that went to, I don't know, USC or some other crappy school. No, I'm just kidding. But I know you guys have rivalries out there, I'm sure. But I think that if you want to truly increase and take your business to the next, like a big level, I think go after the low-hanging fruit. Go after those people that would be thrilled to do business with you because you share that common bond. So it might be fellow players, football players, or fellow athletes, or fellow alums. It might even be also obviously people that live in your neighborhood or people that have seen your business before. But I think so much effort and time is spent by businesses, small businesses, in trying to go after the new client, the new area, the new whatever it is, without realizing that, geez, I've got this right here. I should be going after this instead of trying to go way out there, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you do a great job in your book, pointing out very actionable things, and you're right. And it goes back to, vision, implementation, execution, right? So visions are unique to all of us, but we all get them. The money is made, the results are won. when you're able to implement that vision, turn it into something, and then actually like do the work that gets you from where you are to where you want to be. So those are great points that you made in your book, and that you obviously just made again. So I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Wait, what book?
Win Again.
Oh,
Win
yeah.
Again. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And look, what I try to do with that book, and I'll throw in a quick little 5-second plug, but basically I've read so many books that don't have anything really in them. There's nothing to, I mean, it's a lot of motivation, or it's a lot of a upsell to the coaching program or whatever it might be. And I just wanted something that's going to be 150 pages of basically nonstop advice to help athletes, but also non-athletes, go from the couch kind of thing and not knowing what to do,
right,
to either being in a job you love being in, or being in running a business you love running. So thanks for bringing that up. Oh wait, I brought it up. But anyway, I'm horrible. But so now we're going to jump to I call it the Hit Your Mark segment. I'm just going to throw a couple quick questions at you, and just whatever pops into mind first. Let's hear it. Very first question is, in football, who hit you the hardest?
Oh man, what's this guy's name? Played for BYU. Man, he hit me so hard I can't even remember his name right now.
Well, I think it's on your forehead written.
Yeah.
Or Riddell, right? Riddell.
Well, I can't think of his name. He ended up making a big play in the Super Bowl. Well, getting a big play made on him in the Super Bowl. But I can't think of his name right now. But yeah, he knocked me out in a game my senior year.
Wow.
Going across the middle, and came down and got me pretty good. That's the hardest I've ever been hit.
Got it. And I'm assuming that in the course of your playing career, there's been, some pranks and some things that were done to rookies and that kind of stuff, right? Is there one that stands out that was just so funny that that isn't necessarily R-rated, but like a funny thing that happened that you remember that was absolutely hilarious?
It was all done in good fun. There was one Popeyes chicken in like all of Miami. It was in like Fort Lauderdale, like 25 minutes away from our facility, another 20 minutes away from the airport. And every away game, they would make me and Ronald Bellamy, well, we were rookies at the time from the University of Michigan, drive and pick up Popeyes and bring it onto the plane. And that was the act of service from a hazing standpoint that I remember the most.
And do you still eat those today, or are you like scarred and you won't touch them?
I'm scarred, man. I don't touch them. Every time I drive by a Popeyes, though, I just remember literally sweating, like leaving the facility, driving to Popeyes, trying not to be late to the plane, being the last one on the tarmac, sweating profusely. I remember that. Yeah, I don't mess with Popeyes for that very reason.
That is awesome. And although I love Popeyes, and I don't even think there's any better fried chicken. So there's a plug. Popeyes, you owe me. Sorry, KFC. So also another quick thing. Give me 3 people right now today, dead or alive, that you'd love to have a beer with, hang out with.
Number 1, I would say, no particular order, right? Barack Obama.
Okay.
Today, Colin Kaepernick.
Okay.
I would love to sit down and pick his brain based off of some of the things he's been able to do in a very short period of time. Controversial, not controversial, however you look at it.
Right.
Lastly, I would probably say maybe Bill Belichick. I think he epitomizes systematic coaching that leads to results, right? So it's a football team, but I think if you take Bill Belichick and you put him in a State Farm insurance office, he'd be the best insurance agent just because he has a great system. So I would be very interested in picking his brain about that as well.
Now, does State Farm have their own hoodie they could borrow? They could lend him? Because Patriots, damn them. Anyway, I'm a Giants fan. What can I say? Runs deep. Well, this is great. Well, look, I think the bottom line here is that, you're a great guy. You're really funny. You're a nice guy. I think that you've got so much in front of you. You've got such a great future, not just, running an agency, but I think you've got a great business mind. And I think you're going to you're going to really kick some butt. But, and what I talk about, and it's the name of the podcast, obviously, is, make your mark. How are you going to make your mark, right? And to me, you've already made a tremendous mark. But what kind of, the last question really is, what sort of legacy do you want to leave behind? What are some of the things you want people to say about you that in looking back, they'll say, wow, JR, what a great guy because blank.
Yeah. So my whole reason for opening this office in the neighborhood that I grew up in is I want to be a resource, right? I want to be the person that if you have a question, you need answers, you come to me, I help you figure it out, right? I may not have all the answers, but I'm going to work hard to make sure that an answer is found. So that's what I would want people to say about me. JR was very generous with his time. He gave very level-headed advice and direction. And yeah, he cared about people, and obviously we're all selfish in the sense that we get into our, industry because we want to take care of ourselves and our family. But I really I'm in an industry that allows me to take care of others.
Right.
While also taking care of mine too. And that's pretty important to me.
That's great. Great answer. Actually, I said that was the last thing, but I have one more thing. I've noticed that as for a football player, you've got a baseball in your hand.
This is my stress ball here. I have
what's there to be stressed about? Come on.
I know, right? No, there's again, understanding your surroundings, understand what calms you down.
Right.
For whatever reason, man, having a ball in my hand, doesn't matter what type of ball it is, it really just takes me to a place of, it allows me to center myself, right? Refocus on what's important and then move forward from there. Because I'm an emotional guy, most wide receivers are, right? We definitely wear our emotion on our sleeve. So a great way for me to center myself is to grab a ball, tussle around with it a little bit, and then normally it brings me back to a logical place if I'm in an emotional state.
I think I just heard that ball scream a little bit. Anyway, well, listen, JR, I really appreciate your time today. It's been a blast. I mean, chatting with you, talking with you, the time flies, right? And it's, you're really easy to talk to. You're a great guy. You're a funny guy. And I really, I think that you've got something really great going. And now it's all about keeping the momentum going, right?
For sure. Absolutely.
Well, thanks again for your time, JR. Have a great rest of the day. And thanks again for being on the Make Your Mark podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.